Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Hello, Brobs. We're back with popular entertainments through the ages. So the Part 1, Chapter 6, Part 1. We shall add this to that. Done. Done. Change. Open. Save, and then open the live stream. And pour some more beer. Hell yeah. Not bad, bruv. Not bad at all. Not great, but not bad at all. Don't you dare spilleth over. Alright, bruvs. Back with Chapter 6 of Popular Entertainments Through the Ages. Why the hell isn't this chat opening? There we go. The halls. The patrons of inns and taverns were not left without entertainment when drama entered the theater. Ballad singers, musicians, acrobats, and strollers of all kinds we saw at the fairs found a welcome there, and in time they gave rise to the music hall. Turned out, that light is on. Which began in the middle of the 19th century. It will be seen from the following advertisement of the early 18th century that the music hall type of entertainment was anticipated in some respects by the theater as well as by the tavern performances. Hello, bruvs. What do you got? What do you got, bruv? For the benefit of Will Bullock, at the Theatre Royal in Drury Lane on Whitsun Monday. That's crazy. Whitsun. We still celebrate Whitsun? Being the 5th of June will be revived the diverting comedy called The Miser, written by the author of The Squire of Alsatia, the part of Timothy Squeeze, the scrivener's foolish son, to be acted by Will Bullock, with entertainments of dancing by Monsieur du Ruel, and Mr. Clinch of Barnet will perform these several performances. First an organ with 3 voices, then the double curtel, the flute, the bells, the huntsman, the horn, and pack of dogs, all with his mouth, and an old woman of 80 years of age nursing her grandchild, all of which he does open on the stage. Next, a gentleman will perform several mimic entertainments on the ladder. First, he stands on the top round with a bottle in one hand and a glass in the other. Touche. Oh, not touche, but cheers, whatever the fuck you say. And drinks a health. I must take a drink of health. Then plays several tunes on the violin with 15 other surprising performances, which no man but himself can do. And Will Pinkerman will dance the Miller's dance and speak a comical joking epilogue on an ass, beginning exactly at 5 o'clock by reason of the length of the entertainments at common prices. Bullock and Pinkerman, Pink F Man, were referred to in the pages dealing with the fairs, to which this particular performance clearly owed a great deal. Variety turns were to be seen in taverns as well as at the fairs. Even equestrian exhibitions were given at tea gardens, which were a development of the tavern idea of the communal partaking of refreshments. Tap rooms and tea gardens were lumped together in the reign of George II by an act which dealt with the regulation of disorderly houses. In the early 19th century, entertainments were being given in various types of rendezvous, from low class houses to luxurious hotels. From the latter, broadly speaking, we derive the cabaret, which is popular entertainment in everything but the price of admission. The working class and middle class entertainments, again, broadly speaking, for the upper class entertainments also helped, gave rise to the music hall. On the premises of public houses, two very similar types of performance took place. The harmonic meeting was held in the long room upstairs. The more intimate sing song took place in the bar parlor and derived some of its voluntary talent from the harmonic meeting. At the latter, there was a sprinkling of professional artistes, and harmonic meeting was described by Boz. The hour being 1 o'clock in the morning, the fun at these gatherings went on until 3 or 4 o'clock. Let's take a look at these before we get into that. Music hall favorites: Arthur Roberts, James Fawn, The Great Avance, George Lyborn, Herbert Campbell, Jolly John Nash, Arthur Lloyd, Charles Coburn. In a lofty room of spacious dimensions are seated some 80 or 100 guests, knocking little pewter measures on the tables and hammering away with the handles of their knives, as if they were so many trunk makers. They are applauding a glee which has just been executed by the three professional gentlemen at the top of the center table, one of whom is in the chair, the little pompous man with the bald head, just emerging from the collar of his green coat. The others are seated on either side of him, the stout man with the small voice and the thin-faced dark man in black. The little man in the chair is a most amusing personage. Such condescending grandeur and such a voice. Bass, or is it bass? As the young gentleman near us with the blue stock forcibly remarks to his companion, Bass. Bass, I believe you. He can go down lower than any man. So low sometimes that you can't hear him, and so he does. To hear him growling away, gradually lower and lower down, till he can't get back again. The hell is that? Is the most delightful thing in the world, and it is quite impossible to witness unmoved the impressive solemnity with which he pours forth his soul in My Arts in the Islands or the brave old Hoke. The stout man is also addicted to sentimentality and warbles, Fly, fly from the world, my Bessie with me, or some such song with ladylike sweetness and in the most seductive tones imaginable. Pray give your orders, gentlemen. Pray give your orders, says the pale faced man with the red head, and demands for goes of gin and goes of brandy and pints of stout and cigars of peculiar mildness are vociferously made from all parts of the room. The professional gentlemen are in the very height of their glory and bestow condescending nods or even a word or two of recognition on the better known frequenters of the room in the most bland and patronizing manner possible. That little round faced man with the small brown surtout, white stockings and shoes is in the comic line, the mixed air of self denial and mental consciousness of his own powers. With which he acknowledges the call of the chair is particularly gratifying. Gentlemen, says the little pompous man, accompanying the word with a knock of the president's hammer on the table, gentlemen, allow me to claim your attention. Our friend Mr. Smuggins will oblige. Bravo! Shout the company, and Smuggins, after a considerable quantity of coughing by way of symphony and a most facetious sniff or two, which afford general delight, sings a comic song with a fall de roll, tall de roll chorus at the end of every verse, much longer than the verse itself. It is received with unbounded applause, and after some aspiring genius has volunteered a recitation and failed dismally therein, the little pompous man gives another knock and says, "Gentlemen, we will attempt a glee, if you please." This announcement calls forth tumultuous applause. That is an harmonic meeting. The following description by the same writer is of a concert in one of the saloon theaters, which immediately preceded the music hall. It begins at the point where Miss Emily Martin, an ambitious amateur, is about to sing her first song as the White Conduit. The hell was that, a bug? The night arrived. There was an immense room, 97, 6 pennorths of gin and water, 32 small glasses of brandy and water, 25 bottled ales, and 41 negusses, and the ornamental painter's journeyman, with his wife and a select circle of acquaintance, were seated at one of the side tables near the orchestra. The concert began, song sentimental by a light-haired young gentleman in a blue coat and bright basket buttons. Applause. Another song doubtful by another gentleman in another blue coat and more bright basket buttons. What's up, Ralphs? Increased applause. Duet. Mr. Jennings Rodolph and Mrs. Jennings Rodolph. Red Ruffian retire. Great applause. Solo. Miss Julia Montague positively on the occasion only. I am a friar. Enthusiasm. Original duet. Comic Mr. H. Taplin, the comic gentleman, and Miss Martin, the time of day. Bravo, bravo, cried the ornamental painter's journeyman's party, as Miss Martin was gracefully led in by the comic gentleman. Go to work, Harry, cried the comic gentleman's personal friends. Tap, tap, tap went the leader's bow on the music desk. The symphony began and was soon afterwards followed by a faint kind of ventriloquial chirping, proceeding apparently from the deepest recesses of the interior of Miss Emily Martin. Sing out, shouted one gentleman in a white great coat. Don't be afraid to put the steam on, old gal, exclaimed another. Sss, went the 25 bottled ales. Shame, shame, remonstrated the ornamental painter's journeyman party. Sss, went the bottled ales again, accompanied by all the gins and a majority of the brandies. The saloon theater in which this scene took place was becoming very disreputable during the 30s when Boz wrote his description, and towards the middle of the century it was closed and demolished. One of the most famous of the saloon theaters, which were taverns or were attached to taverns, was the Grecian. Associated with it was the Eagle Tavern, famous to this day in the jingle, up and down the city road, in and out the Eagle, That's the way the money goes. Pop goes the wheeze out. Another leading theater was the Union Saloon in Shoreditch, as the law which prohibited the performance of legitimate plays by the non patent theaters had been falling into disuse. The Union Saloon in 1834 produced Othello. The theater was raided by the police. All the actors, attendants, members of the audience, directors, and musicians were clapped into a lockup for the night. In the morning, they were fined and warned against breaking the law for the protection of the poorer classes against intelligent entertainment. Not long after this, the monopoly was abolished. It was then noticed that the saloon theaters had an advantage over the others, for during the course of a play, smoking, drinking, and eating were permitted in the auditorium. In 1843, therefore, the Theaters Act was passed. Where plays were being performed, no open smoking or drinking was allowed, but they were permitted in variety houses. Some of the saloon theaters became ordinary theaters. The others, with numerous additions, stuck to variety. Thus came into existence the music hall. Dude, put it in English or fuck off. How's that sound? Am I supposed to translate this shit? One more fucking time, and then you're done. I can't do it. I can't do it, bruv. If you got no English, I got no fucking patience. Now, where the fucking hell was I? Some of the saloon theaters became ordinary theaters. The others, with numerous additions, stuck to variety. Thus came into existence the music hall. It obtained freedom in the auditorium at the expense of bondage on the stage, for it was not allowed to produce plays. The Canterbury in Lambeth was early on the scene as the first building to be erected as a music hall. The proprietor money from tavern free and easies. What an inspired name for a type of popular entertainment. One of the earliest artists whom he introduced at the Canterbury was Sims Reeves, a young singer who was destined to become England's greatest tenor. In 1861, Charles Morton opened the Oxford in Oxford Street. Here, as at the Canterbury, the ground floor, divided into stalls and pit, was supplied with tables and chairs, and waiters served refreshments. During the 60s, the number of music halls increased rapidly. In 1870, the following, among other halls, were advertising in the Music Hall Critic: London Pavilion, Sun Music Hall, Knightsbridge, Forrester's Grand Music Hall, Mile End, Raglan Music Hall, Bloomsbury, Eastern Music Hall, Limehouse, Sam Collins's Music Hall, Islington, Marylebone Music Hall, Royal Music Hall, Holborn, Alhambra, South London Palace of Amusement, Metropolitan Music Hall, Edgware Road, Royal Cambridge Music Hall, Bishopsgate, Winchester Music Hall, Southwark Bridge Road, Middlesex Music Hall, Drury Lane, Gaddy's Hall of Varieties, Westminster Bridge Road. In the 80s came the new Tivoli, the Empire, and other palatial halls. The music halls specialized in songs, variety turns, and refreshments. The theater gave its patrons less freedom and a different type of entertainment. In between were houses which combined the respectability of the theater with the variety program of the music hall. It may be interesting to go back to about the year 1850 and visit one of these places of entertainment. The audience is composed of working class people of both sexes, most of them below the age of 20, and some of them mere children. They enter through the door of a shop, and in return for their penny, each of them receives from a girl a square tin check. Then they pass into a dark vestibule, which is lit by only a single spur of gas projecting from the broken plaster of the wall. At a counter is sold ginger beer and other non intoxicating refreshments, and the waiting people are able to pass the time away at a gaming table, which is looked after by the youth at the counter. No one really loses anything here, for the attendant holds the stakes, and it is customary for the winner to stand ginger beers all round. This is nearly one of several signs of a general spirit of friendliness. Everything is so much in order as regards decency that the two sexes sit in different parts of the hall. There is seating accommodation for about 1,000 people, and the auditorium possesses a crude form of circle and gallery. The orchestra, which sits in front of the stage, is composed of a fiddler and a harpist. They take their seats, and a man lights with a match several jets of gas, which come from a rusty iron pipe running along the foot of the stage. The fiddle and the harp strike up a hearty tune. In a few minutes, amid the stamping of feet and the clapping of hands, the curtain ascends with a succession of jerks, which raise it a foot at a time. The first turn is a burlesque of grand opera, not a word being uttered except in song or recitative. A deserted wife comes on and sings a plaintive ditty. Then appears her husband, gay Lothario, who, having had too much to drink, has now too much to say. Singing tipsily, he acknowledges that he has been roaming and drinking, and in general having a high old time. His deserted wife tunefully tells him what she thinks of him, and he accuses her of jealousy. Then she denies, asserting that he could never make her jealous. Can't he? He will see. So he praises in song the charms of pretty Polly Doodle. His unjealous wife thereupon goes into all manner of musical hysterics in the operatic tragedy style. The heart of the husband is touched. He declares that pretty Polly Doodle does not really exist, and he promises never to see her again. They become reconciled and sing a happy duet. The curtain falls, and there is more music from the fiddle and the harp, while the scene is noisily being changed. Then the curtain rises jerkily, and an athlete appears. He looks strong and agile, and is carrying a punch bowl and also 4 decanters, which are all half full of wine. He puts 3 of the decanters on the table, sets a bowl on them, places the 4th decanter on the bowl, and then stands on the top. Another feat he performs is to place a chair on the 4 decanters, 1 leg on each. Put on this another chair upside down. Spring to the top rung of the inverted chair, and there stand on his head. This feat brings down the house. The next artiste is evidently a star turn. He is well dressed, and with the greatest confidence in the world he comes forward and waves his hand to the orchestra of Chew, who strike up the music of a rattling comic song. The singer is supposed to be a pickpocket of the stylish sort. He tells of how he carries on his trade robbing with a democratic disregard of rank, both my lord, with whom he dines, and my lord's cook, with whom he sups in the kitchen. This turn is received with thunderous applause. The manager comes forward and, in a neat speech, informs the audience that the performance will conclude with a ballet entitled A Statue for Sale. He thanks them for their liberal patronage and is pleased to inform them that an entirely new ballet is being prepared and will be submitted to their judgment the following week. After some more music, the grand ballet commences. The scene is a garden in front of a cottage, and the principal characters are Columbine, Pantaloon, Spoonie, True Lover, and Rival. All the action takes place in dumb show. In fact, although the manager has called it a ballet, A Statue for Sale is in several ways a survival of the earliest form of English pantomime. As we have seen, by this time pantomime had altered so much as to be almost unrecognizable. And in the very same year as that in which the humble penny gaff was proving the merits of the old and simple style of entertainment, the Royal Victoria Theatre, the Old Vic, presented a pantomime with perhaps the most complicated plot and longest title on record. The title being Harlequin William the Conqueror, and King Vice of the Silent City, or War, Wine, and Love, and Queen Virtue in the vistas of light and glitter. It is refreshing after that to return to the simplicity of a statue for sale. True Lover very effectively disposes of his enemies in almost the true punch fashion, and the knockabout humor of the piece arouses a great deal of laughter. He arranges that he shall be sold as a wonderful statue of Pallas, which is guaranteed to perform marvelous feats when the works in the pedestal are wound up. Pantaloon winds up the statue, and immediately the goddess of wisdom and war cripples him with blows. Rival does the same and suffers a like fate. Spoony follows and is beaten until he faints. The statue then elopes with Columbine. Spoony revives and finds the helmet, sword, and shield of Pallas, dresses himself as the goddess, and stands on the pedestal. Pantaloon returns to the spot and again winds up the statue, with the same result as before, only this time he discovers the trick. He is about to be revenged on Spoony when the newlywed Columbine and True Lover come rushing in. Then follows a reconciliation and a grand finale, and the program concludes. 2. One feature of the early music hall that has passed away deserves particular attention: the chairman. He has been seen at work in Boz's description of an harmonic meeting. In the words put into his mouth by a writer of 1870, he may be allowed to speak for himself as regards the music hall. I commenced the evening with a few raps, and then announced the first singer thus: "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Blank will appear and sing the first song." It's sometimes very hard work on my part to get the audience to listen to a second, and harder still to a third, and for the next singer, generally a lady, I beg their kind attention. For the third, I ask for their kind indulgence, and for the fourth, who's rather a star, I inform the people that I have great pleasure in announcing, and etc. Rap, tap, bangs. The next happens to be a pair of bounding brothers, and I, having gained wisdom by past experience, always leave my chair till they've gone through the performance. When I rush back and hammer fiercely, they come before the curtain, make a bow, and leave the stage. Myself and audience awaiting the arrival of the great man, comique, who don't come to time and never will. Now, this is a moment when the chairman should not be thought a jolly fellow. This is the time he really suffers. You can detect it in the rash way in which he orders 3 of brandy and pays for it. He whispers softly to the gentlemen of the band, and they strike up an overture. Part of the audience will scarcely wait for silence, and they respond by making more noise than ever. After a few attempts to explain, he goes on the stage and sings a sentimental song. Perhaps they may condescend to hear him out, and then call for hornpipe, or jig. He again gets into the chair, and again the band strikes up, and at the close of half an hour's fearful row, the great star does put in an appearance, and as he walks grandly through the hall, receives any amount of applause from everybody but the said chairman, who politely begs him not to be late tomorrow night, and he politely informs the chairman that if he's cheeky and says much, he'll see him blowed if he comes at all. I don't know what that means, but all right. And this sort of thing goes on all the evening. So if you imagine a music hall chair to be a bed of roses, you're wrong. Shall we look at these before we go to 3? Vesta Tilly, Albert Chevalier. Oh, these are. Whoa, whoa, don't knock over the beer. G.H. Hergwin, Eugene Stratton, my gal is a high-born lady. Gus, Ellen, Alec Hurley. Frey, that's for Frey. Historians sometimes have to turn to popular songs for their serious purposes. For our light-hearted purposes, we will turn for a little to history. When an entertainment includes words, is popular with adults, and is intelligent, it deals occasionally with matters which are of historical importance. For example, the ballad singers of the Middle Ages helped to fan the flames of discontent which broke out in the peasant revolt. They sang, "When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman? It was inevitable that they should do this." They were closely in touch with the life of their audiences, and Anglo-Saxons were asserting their determination not to be bound as serfs. The halls of the 60s were patronized mainly by the working class. There was acute economic and political discontent among its patrons, and this found some expression in the songs. If it had not done so, the halls would not have been in touch with everyday life. It may therefore be interesting to see just how far the music hall can go in this direction. The following is an extract from a song that was written by the most popular music hall songwriter of that period, the Daily News, ere green grow the rushes. As through this precious world you stare, this bit of counsel take from me, don't you believe all that you hear, and only half of what you see. The Standard Star or Telegraph of what's going on give their own views, but at their information laugh. I'll tell you what's the Daily News. Chorus, the newspapers are all my eye, so don't the Times or Sun peruse. Just listen to me and I'll try to tell you what's the Daily News. The Daily News is this, my boys. The rich get richer every day, monopolizing all life's joys, while the poor, the piper, have to pay. French cooks and tailors for the great, for the small hard fare and oft no shoes, and hundreds forced to emigrate. That's bona fide Daily News, and so on, including two lines which might be modern. Two divorce courts daily rush a lot, who've hammer and tongs been going it. In one of her most popular songs, Jenny Hill chaffed a dressed up working man, as in the chorus. "Oh, Ari, what, Ari? There you are, Ari. I say, Ari, by Jove, you are a Don. Oh, Ari, Ari, there you are, then, Ari. Where are you going on Sunday, Ari? Now you've got 'em on." But in the final verse, the great comedian uttered a thought which showed that she was not only dealing with Ari for the sake of the subject, but was prepared to go as far as the utterance of his real thoughts on the upper class. "Ari likes a jolly good joke. Quite right, Ari. Ari won't mind the fun that I spoke. What say, Ari? The upper ten may jeer and say what cads the Aris are, but the Aris work and pay their way while doing the la-di-da." Dan Leno dealt, but as a comedian, not a partisan, with the march of the unemployed. Here is some of the patter from the Midnight March. "It is my intention to hold a meeting here today and say a few speaks. Working men of England, you must rally round me. Working men, you don't seem to understand yourselves. You must rouse yourselves, get behind yourselves, and push yourselves forward. Don't stand about the place and stand about just for the sake of standing. No, now is the time and the only time. When time is time, you can't get away from facts. What did Mr. Gladstone say the other day? Ah, what did he say? I again ask you, working men of England, what did he say? You know some people see things when they look at them. You can't eat soap and wash with it. Well, that proves what I have just said, that the working men of England at the present day are ant. Why the hell is there an ant on me? The working men of England at the present day are nothing more or less than working men. You can't get away from facts. The supreme example of a song in which the singer stands before his audience as the proclaimed representative of the British working man is Will Fife's I Belong to Glasgow. Tipsily and humorously, he has his say, and he gets in some real Clydeside digs at the plutocrats. Otherwise, the characterization would be untrue. And of course, it is nature and not propaganda with which he is concerned. Needless to say, he has other notable songs and impersonations in his wonderful repertoire. The difference between Will Fife's song and the one about the Daily News is not merely that the earlier piece was out and out partisan. It lies in the fact that the modern comedian is an artist who creates as well as an artiste who transmits. His song is not versified propaganda. He has created a character. Having combined humor with characterization, he says things that are definitely class conscious and yet makes everyone laugh, including those who may have cause to resent some of the utterances. This is one of the most difficult tasks which any entertainer can set himself. Shaw, the propagandist, who uses comedy as a means to an end, can do it. Fife, the comedian, who uses propaganda as a means to an end, can also do it. Few others have the ability. No school can be founded by a comedian of this type. Regarding Fife merely as the singer of this particular song, there are not enough capable pupils, nor can one be founded in England by a singer of songs which are pure propaganda. These will never be regarded for long as popular entertainment. They went down well when the art of the music hall was in its infancy, for one of the easiest ways of arousing the enthusiasm of an audience is by voicing its opinions. It is also a natural way when the audience is mainly composed of people of the same opinion. But when the audience becomes more representative of society in general, pure propaganda will not be tolerated. Humorous characterization is the direction in which the opportunities lie. It was by this that the music hall, becoming more embracive as regards the audience and at the same time developing its art, reached the pinnacle of its glory. The abundance of first class artistes made the music hall a wonderful form of popular entertainment. Unfortunately, the very same fact makes it difficult to write about the halls. The trouble being the pang which comes from the rejection of interesting material. However, we will do what music hall managers themselves had to do, and will include certain artistes on our program for the sake of variety. Sufficient material in the form of songs, patter, illustrations, and descriptions will be placed at the reader's disposal to enable him to conjure up not one, but several first class programs. Nor will the more ordinary side of the halls be neglected, for its exclusion lends a false glamour to popular entertainments of the past. The Great Vance, as Alfred Glanville Vance was billed, was one of the outstanding music hall figures from the middle 60s to the late 80s. He was one of the earliest singers of Coster songs, and the late H. Chance Newton, that fine old critic, said in Idols of the Halls that not even Albert Chevalier or Gus Ellen, among others, ever surpassed him in his three best Coster ditties: Costermonger Joe, Going to the Derby, and the Chickalary Cove. Here is a verse of Costermonger Joe. I'm Costermonger Joe, and as many rounds I go, for many a mile the gals all smile on Costermonger Joe. With mind devoid of care and spirits as light as air, I whistle and I sing, and cabbages bring from Covent Garden, oh. In his most popular songs, however, Vance played the swell. The airs were particularly tuneful. One of the greatest favorites with audiences was Walking in the Zoo, of which this is the beginning. The Stilton, sir, the cheese, and the okay thing to do on Sunday afternoon is to toddle in the zoo. Weekdays may do for cads, but not for me and you. So dressed right down the road, we'll show them who is who. Chorus, the walking in the zoo, walking in the zoo. The okay thing on Sunday is the walking in the zoo. Walking in the zoo, walking in the zoo. The okay thing on Sunday is the walking in the zoo. The following lines from Slap Bang or Jolly Dogs are we sent huge audiences wild with delight. They are a fine example of determined jollity, and exhibit a vulgarity of spirit which was worse than the so-called vulgarity of subject of a later date. This was probably the silliest song that was ever chortled by Vance or anyone else. Slap bang, here we are again. Here we are again, here we are again. Slap bang, here we are again. Such jolly dogs are we. Yes, we always are so jolly, oh, quite jolly, oh. We always are so jolly, oh, such jolly dogs are we. Vance was a conscientious artiste, but in some of his songs, although most of his contemporaries were far worse, he took too great advantage of the fact that he was singing in a music hall and not a drawing room. This is a feature of popular entertainments that has been met before. It will shortly be encountered again. A striking story regarding Vance is therefore worth relating. When he died in 1888, a certain Church of England clergyman begged the privilege of conducting the burial service. He was granted his wish, and at the graveside he made a statement which astonished those gathered round. As a young student, the clergyman had got into riotous company. At the bar of the Oxford Music Hall one night, when he was drinking and swearing, an artiste, addressing him as "my dear lad," persuaded him to go outside with him. The young man was taken to Vance's lodgings, sobered, encouraged to pursue his studies for the church, and night after night for weeks Vance took him round the music halls at which he was performing, at which he was saying things unfit for the ears of a clergyman, and then brought him again to the lodgings. Vance stuck close to him until he had seen him with his feet set firmly on the ladder which is pitched betwixt heaven and even the music hall. George Leyburn entered the halls in the late 60s, and his personal qualities took him almost at once to the very top of the profession. He was tall, lithe, and handsome, and had a splendid voice. He had an eye for character and a stage-acquired facility of portraying it. Champagne Charlie was the song that made him famous almost at the beginning of his music hall career. The chorus of this heavy swell song caught the fancy of the town, and certainly no one had any difficulty in learning the words. Champagne Charlie is my name. Champagne Charlie is my name. Good for any game at night, my boys. Good for any game at night, my boys. Champagne Charlie is my name. Champagne Charlie is my name. Good for any game at night, boys. Who'll come and join me in a spree? Leyburn carried double meanings and direct statements to such a length that he and the managers of the halls in which he sang were severely warned by the authorities. Yet, like Vance, whom he resembled in being good-natured and generous, Leyburn was too clever an entertainer to require the aid of the unprintable. Lecturing by friends and newspaper critics does little good in such cases. The best remedy is in the hands of the audience. If Leyburn had found that the jokes were not well received, he would have dropped them like hot bricks. Arthur Roberts has already been in connection with the invasion of music hall comedians into the polite realms of pantomime at the commencement of the 80s, some 10 years before that he had begun his musical career like many other stars by singing as an amateur in town halls, taverns, and even temperance houses. In a few years after entering the halls, he was at the top of the tree. He was a first class actor and singer, and this enabled him from time to time to forsake the music halls for light opera. Ladies' versions of some of the songs which he and James Fawn, that other great comedian, sang as duets would have been very necessary in a drawing room. The singers were warned by the authorities. Here is a verse and the chorus from one of his many other songs. After it is the ladies' version, which was then so frequently attached to songs that were popular among the predominantly male audiences of the music halls. The song is Wedding Bells or Take Him Home. When I was single, how I longed to gain a loving wife, and never thought that one could be the cause of noise or strife. I used to think them angels quite, I fancied they were saints. I used to think them Venuses, without the aid of paints. Chorus, the bells they rang merrily, ding, ding, dong. I fancy they said there's another gone wrong. And the people they tittered while passing along, and said, take that poor fellow home. Ladies' version, young Cupid's such a naughty boy, he never can keep still. He fills your foolish heart with joy, and then he treats you ill. He fills your mind with doubt and fear, then laughs your fears to scorn, and bids you stay the falling tear, and cease to grieve and mourn. Chorus, and the bells they ring merrily, ding, ding, dong. The lark chiming in with his love-laden song, and whispering echoes repeating ere long, oh, be happy wherever you roam. And we might as well look at these before I go into the next section. I could do with a bit little titches. Harry Lauder, is that you, McAllister? Hearty good wishes from George Layton and this motherfucker. Get in there. 5. The expression of the patriotic feelings of the audience has always been an essential element, in popular entertainment. And as the music hall was more closely in touch with life than any other institution in the world of entertainment, it naturally gave a foremost place in its songs to patriotism. In 1877, for example, Russia and Turkey were at war. It was probable that the power whom Britain had fought in the Crimea would capture Constantinople. A warlike spirit was shown by Lord Beaconsfield and many others. This fucking thing. What is this thing? Why are you here? And why are you torturing me? Get out. Or you're going to hell. Get back in the glass, you fucker. A warlike spirit was shown by Lord Beaconsfield and many others, and it was responsible for one of the most famous English songs of all time. The singer was G.H. McDermott, billed as the Great McDermott, who was appearing at the London Pavilion. And the chorus of the song was, we don't want to fight, but by jingo, if we do, we've got the ships, we've got the men, we've got the money too. We fought the bear before, and while Britons shall be true, the Russians shall not have Constantinople. The words were sung enthusiastically all over the country, were even quoted in Parliament and added to the English vocabulary, the word jingo. Another aspect of war was dealt with shortly afterwards by Charles Godfrey. He was a clever comedian, but will be longest remembered as the originator of the descriptive song with a dramatic setting and effects. The new form of entertainment became very popular, and Godfrey was able to say of On Guard, most music hall frequenters are familiar with the story which it is sought to tell in that song. Here is his own description of On Guard. I guess I can wait with those. And it represents the fate of a British soldier who, after fighting and bleeding for his queen and country, is left by the latter to die in the streets of misery and want. The first scene is laid in the trenches before Sebastopol, where a solitary soldier stands valiantly on guard until a chance bullet from the enemy lays him low. The exterior of a village churchyard forms scene two, with a dimly lit church in the background from which issues the music of the organ and the choir in more or less luminous strains. The old Crimean hero, enfeebled with age and work, now enters, and after bewailing the neglect of his country, whose foes he fought so well, sinks down on a convenient gravestone, where he dies to the accompaniment of slow music and a fall of snow. A later artiste, George Layton, went beyond the stage of sympathetic portrayal of the fate of Crimean heroes. He sang patriotic ballads such as his famous Boys of the Chelsea School, in which real schoolboys and real Chelsea pensioners were introduced. When he arrived in the town, he asked the local authorities if they knew of any veterans. For the benefit of the most deserving case, he gave a special performance at which the words of the songs were sold, the proceeds in some instances amounting to £30. In this manner he collected several £1,000s. Miss Kate Carney, Lottie Collins, Miss Nellie Farron, Miss Vesta Victoria, Six. To hold the mirror up to nature is an immortal phrase, but the dramatist who wrote it did not, like many of those in whose mouth the words are found, interpret them literally. The mirror which he held up reflected only as much as he wanted it to, and as Shakespeare was an artist, the reflection was not absolutely realistic. His example was followed by the very best of the music hall performers, and the difference between these and the foremost members of the Zolesque school may be seen from a comparison between two distinguished artistes who drew their inspiration from Cockney life. They are Albert Chevalier, the portrait painter, and Gus Ellen, the wonderfully skillful photographer. Gus Ellen was rightly a very popular artiste, and he took great pride in his realism. His greatest hit was probably E. Dunno, where E.R. It dealt with a Covent Garden porter who had dropped into a little bit of money and become arrogant toward his former pals. One of these was the singer of the song. Gus Ellen, commenting on it, explained his general method of working. My makeup for this song, I may mention, is an exact reproduction of the attire of an old chap who may be seen any day in the region of Covent Garden Market. In fact, I invariably model myself in this manner upon some striking type of the class I intend to portray in my impersonations. The characterization, like the makeup, was as realistic as possible. He decided at the very beginning of his career as a singer of coster ditties that his rendering of character should be neither idealistic nor in the nature of caricature, but just realistic. The following is an extract from Never Introduce Your Dona to a Pal, which was very popular. I've lost my gal through a pal of mine as was. Always with me, nar. I'll tell you why, because me and him was partners in a donkey cart. That's what made me introduce him to the tart. One day I says, Bill, I wants the cart today. He says, me too, in a aggravating way. As I did not want to go and needle him, I takes my gal along o' me to wheedle him. Chorus, never introduce your donah to a pal, 'cause the odds is 10 to 1 he sneaks your gal. He'll stand her whelks and porter, and upon the sly'll quarter. Never introduce your donah to a pal. Take my tip, always keep your blinkers on your gal. Albert Chevalier was an artist to the fingertips. He was a great actor, successful on the legitimate stage before he went to the music halls, where he rose to the very top. A trained musician, he composed tuneful melodies, added to them his own excellent words, and sang the resultant masterpiece with consummate skill. He could appeal to the emotions, as in My Old Dutch, to the intellect, as in Time. It was in reply to a text on the music wrote and sang the goody good tune, time, of which two choruses and a verse follow. In the great good time, the goody goody time, when cardinals and bishops go a mumming, should we then dine a la carte, we shall blush to mention tart, in the very, very good time coming. A magic lantern show will be considered very fast. Sing hey for the good time coming, and folks will say how nice to have a moral show at last. Sing hey for the good time coming. The ballad, too, will be a real credit to our stage. Decorum and propriety, of course, will be the rage. You'll never see a dancer under 50 years of age. In the very, very good time coming. In the great good time, the goody good time, when acrobats and curates started chumming. Men like Blondin, they'll indict if the rope they walk is tight. In the very, very good time coming. By kind permission of Messengers Reynolds and Company, 44 Bannis Street, London. All right, bruvs. That's 20 pages, and we will stop there. We will stop there, bruv. Yeah. All right. Bye.